Chosen one, pause for a breath. Before your mind tries to explain this away, before logic steps in to interrupt the moment, feel this. You didn't click this by accident. You didn't wander here out of boredom. This moment was arranged with precision, time beyond clocks and calendars. Something unseen guided your attention here, because heaven knows you've been carrying questions you don't speak out loud. Pain you learned to hide, confusion that grew when answers refused to come. And yet, through it all, you stayed standing. You've been walking through shadows, chosen one, feeling watched, tested, measured by forces you couldn't name. And before we go deeper, pause for a moment. Hit subscribe, like, share, and comment Amen if your spirit is already responding. Because this message is about to speak directly to you, not as content, but as confirmation. Let this be your signal that you're ready to receive what's been tracking you quietly. There were nights you felt spiritually investigated, moments when life seemed to press harder on you than on everyone else. That wasn't random. Pressure reveals power, and what you've been developing wasn't forged in comfort. It was shaped in silence. While others reacted, you observed. While others exploded, you restrained. While others begged for attention, you refined your inner world. Heaven saw it. Darkness noticed it. And that's when the resistance intensified. Chosen one, what you've mastered isn't obvious to the untrained eye. It's subtle, controlled, dangerous to darkness. You learned how to stay calm when chaos wanted you loud. How to move wisely when provocation wanted you reckless. How to listen when ego wanted to speak. This is a new power, one rooted in authority, not noise. Light without arrogance, strength without cruelty. And that's why even the enemy wants to understand it, but cannot replicate it. The devil studies patterns, but you broke yours. He predicts reactions, but you chose restraint. He feeds on fear, but you developed awareness. This is divine validation. The battles you survived weren't meant to break you, they were training. Every delay, every misunderstanding, every season of isolation was calibrating you for this level. You're not late, you're not lost, you're right on time. So stay here, chosen one, because what's about to be revealed will explain why your life never fit ordinary paths, and why the power you've mastered can never be taken from you once you understand it. Chosen one, there is a reason your life began to change the moment you stopped reacting. Not the moment you prayed louder, not the moment you explained yourself better, but the moment you learned how to sit in stillness while chaos tried to pull you out of alignment. This was not weakness, this was training, and very few ever pass this lesson. The enemy thrives on reaction because reaction gives him access. Every emotional outburst, every impulsive word, every rushed decision creates an opening. For a long time, you didn't even realize how often you were being pulled into invisible traps. Arguments that drained your energy, situations designed to provoke you, people who knew exactly which button to press, but something shifted inside you. You began to pause, to breathe, to observe instead of explode. And in that pause, power was born. Ask yourself this, chosen one. When was the last time something tried to provoke you and failed? When was the last time you felt the urge to react, but chose restraint instead? That moment mattered more than you know, because the enemy cannot manipulate what he cannot predict. And the moment you stopped reacting on instinct, you became unpredictable to darkness. Silence became your weapon, not because you were afraid to speak, but because you understood the weight of your words. You realized that not every battle deserves your voice. Not every accusation needs a defense. Silence in your hands became strategic. It confused those who expected you to break. It unsettled those who fed on your emotional response. And spiritually, it cut off supply lines the enemy once relied on. Patience became your shield, not passive waiting, but disciplined control. You learned how to endure discomfort without abandoning your integrity. You learned how to let time expose truth instead of forcing outcomes. And this patience protected you from traps disguised as shortcuts. It kept you from making decisions in moments of emotional heat that would have cost you years. Do you see it now, chosen one? This is real power, not dominance over others, but mastery over self. And self-control is one of the rarest spiritual authorities because it cannot be stolen, rushed, or faked. It must be developed in private, refined through pressure, and tested through provocation. That's why resistance increased when you changed. That's why distractions grew louder. The enemy sensed that his leverage was gone. You were no longer easy to move, easy to trigger, easy to derail. You had learned how to remain centered when storms were designed to scatter you. So let me ask you this. What would happen if you never gave your power away again? What if every reaction you once offered freely was now replaced with awareness, calm, and intentional movement? That version of you is dangerous to darkness, and heaven is not intimidated by it. Heaven trusts it. Stay present, chosen one, because this self-control you've mastered is only the foundation. And once you understand what it unlocks next, you'll realize why this season had to shape you so deeply before revealing what comes after. Chosen one, there was a moment, quiet, almost unnoticeable, when you stopped announcing yourself to the world. Not because you had nothing to say, but because you finally understood something sacred. Power does not need permission, and purpose does not need applause. This lesson didn't come from comfort. It came from being misunderstood too many times. From explaining yourself to people who never intended to understand. From leaking vision to ears that weren't aligned with your destiny. You learned to move without announcing yourself, and that shift changed everything. Before, you felt the urge to explain your plans, to justify your pace, to make others see what you saw. But every explanation drained you. Every search for approval delayed you. And slowly, almost divinely, you became quieter. Not withdrawn, not fearful, but focused. You realize that what's meant for you doesn't require consensus. It requires obedience. Ask yourself this, chosen one, how many times did you speak too early and feel resistance rise immediately after? How often did doubt enter the room the moment you shared something sacred? That wasn't coincidence. That was exposure. And heaven began teaching you the wisdom of silence, not as hiding, but as protection. You stopped seeking approval because you learned where approval truly comes from. You noticed that external validation was unstable, conditional, and often rooted in others' insecurities. One day they clapped, the next day they questioned. One day they supported, the next day they compared. So you disconnected, not emotionally, but spiritually. You stopped handing your future to opinions. And in that release, clarity returned. Then came the deepest shift. You stopped broadcasting your growth, not because growth ended, but because it accelerated. Growth thrives in privacy. Seeds don't announce themselves underground. Muscles don't develop on display. Even light itself travels fastest through unseen spaces. And you understood that every time you broadcasted progress, you invited interference. So you chose discretion over display. Darkness can't attack what it can't locate. That's not poetry, that's strategy. The enemy doesn't fear movement, he fears silent movement. Loud progress attracts resistance before it matures. Quiet progress matures before it's noticed. And you, chosen one, learned how to move in alignment without leaving a trail for disruption to follow. Have you noticed how certain obstacles stopped appearing once you became quieter? How some conflicts dissolved simply because you no longer fed them information? That wasn't avoidance, that was wisdom. You were learning how to pass through spaces undetected, guarded not by walls but by awareness. This is not shrinking. This is refinement. This is the discipline of knowing when to speak and when to let results speak for you. Heaven trusts those who can carry vision without leaking it. That's why things began aligning behind the scenes. That's why doors started opening without announcements. That's why you felt guided even when no one else knew what you were building. So let me ask you, chosen one, what if your silence is not emptiness, but incubation? What if the reason you've been quieter is because something powerful is forming, something that must arrive complete, not debated into existence? Stay steady, stay concealed when needed, because this ability to move without announcing yourself is not isolation, it's elevation. And once the timing is right, what's been growing in silence will speak with authority no noise could ever match. Chosen one, there was a time when caution felt like fear and distance felt like weakness. But that season is over. What you carry now is not anxiety, not suspicion, not walls built from past wounds. What you gained is discernment, and discernment is a gift that only comes after survival. It is the quiet intelligence of the spirit, the ability to perceive what is not yet spoken, to sense what has not yet revealed its face. You now sense danger before it shows itself. Not because you are looking for threats, but because your spirit has been trained to read atmospheres. You feel the shift in energy when something is misaligned. You notice hesitation in your chest, a pause in your spirit, a subtle heaviness that says, "Not this, not here, not now." And instead of ignoring it like you once did, you listen. That alone has saved you from battles you never had to fight. Ask yourself, chosen one, how many times did you avoid chaos simply by trusting what you felt, even when it made no logical sense? How many times did you walk away early and later realize what you escaped? That wasn't fear pulling you back. That was wisdom guiding you forward, quietly, precisely, without needing to explain itself. You learned how to walk away without drama. No announcements, no arguments, no need to prove why something didn't feel right. In the past, you might have stayed too long, trying to fix what was never yours to carry. But discernment taught you that peace is not something you negotiate for. It's something you protect. You don't owe everyone access to your time, your energy, or your future. And then came the deeper layer. You began seeing traps disguised as opportunities. Shiny doors with heavy consequences. Fast gains that would have cost your integrity. Invitations that looked aligned but carried hidden strings. You noticed how some opportunities arrived rushed, pressured, demanding immediate commitment. And discernment whispered, if it's truly for you, it won't need to trap you. So you waited, and in waiting you were spared. Do you see how rare this is, chosen one? Many people confuse fear with discernment because both can feel like restraint, but fear shrinks you. Discernment protects you. Fear keeps you stuck. Discernment keeps you safe while still moving forward. And you learn the difference because you paid attention when others rushed ahead. This wisdom is priceless and untouchable. It cannot be manipulated out of you. It cannot be stolen by deception. It cannot be rushed by pressure. The enemy cannot argue with discernment because it doesn't rely on evidence. It relies on alignment. That's why confusion lessened when discernment increased. That's why your path became clearer even when fewer people understood it. So let me ask you, chosen one, what if your hesitation is not hesitation at all, but divine intelligence speaking softly? What if the reason you no longer chase everything is because you can finally see clearly? Honor this gift. Trust it without apology. Because discernment is not fear, it is spiritual sight. And those who see clearly are no longer easy to deceive, delay, or destroy. Chosen one, there was a season when pain knocked on your life again and again. And for a while it felt personal. It felt targeted. It felt unfair. You asked yourself why the pressure never seemed to ease, why lessons kept repeating, why rest felt delayed. But what you didn't see at first was this. Pain was not sent to destroy you. It was assigned to train you. And the moment you stopped fighting it and started learning from it, everything changed. Instead of breaking, you refined. You didn't shatter the way circumstances expected you to. You didn't collapse into bitterness or self-pity. You began to observe yourself under pressure. You noticed where you were still reactive, where emotions ruled decisions, where habits needed correction. Pain became a mirror, not a sentence. And with every difficult moment, you adjusted something within, your mindset, your boundaries, your discipline. That is rare strength. Ask yourself this, chosen one, who would you be today if you had escaped that pain instead of walking through it? What depth would be missing? What awareness would you lack? Pain forced you to slow down and pay attention. It stripped illusions. It removed shortcuts. It demanded maturity where comfort never could. And because you stayed present instead of running, you gained something pain never gives to everyone: wisdom. Instead of complaining, you adjusted. That doesn't mean you didn't feel the weight. It means you refused to let suffering turn you sour. You learned how to correct your posture under pressure, how to respond instead of react, how to conserve energy instead of wasting it on resentment. Complaints would have kept you stuck in the lesson. Adjustment allowed you to graduate from it. Do you realize how powerful that shift is? Most people bleed outward when they're hurt, blaming, venting, projecting. You bled inward and healed. You disciplined your thoughts. You disciplined your time. You disciplined your emotions. And slowly pain stopped controlling you because it was no longer ignored or dramatized. It was integrated. Pain trained you in ways success never could. It taught you consistency when motivation faded. It taught you restraint when anger felt justified. It taught you endurance when quitting would have been easier and socially acceptable. And through that training, your spirit gained density. You became solid, rooted, grounded, not easily shaken. That's why your presence now carries weight. When you enter a room, people feel something, even if they can't explain it. It's not loud, it's not aggressive, it's gravity. You've been through enough to speak without desperation, to move without panic, to listen without insecurity. Your energy is steady because it was forged, not gifted. Have you noticed how you don't rush the way you used to? How you don't chase validation the same way? How you trust your ability to endure whatever comes next? That confidence didn't come from ease. It came from surviving difficulty with discipline intact. So let me ask you, chosen one, what if the pain you resented most is the very reason you now carry authority? What if the weight people feel when you arrive is the evidence that suffering did not hollow you out, but solidified you? Honor what you've become. Respect the discipline pain carved into you. Because this version of you cannot be rushed, easily broken, or casually dismissed. Pain trained you, and now your very presence speaks before you ever say a word. Chosen one, there was a time when your heart was open but unguarded, when empathy made you accessible and loyalty made you vulnerable. You felt deeply, cared sincerely, and gave generously, but not everyone who benefited from that deserved access to you. And life made sure you learned that lesson the hard way. Not to harden you, but to sharpen you. What stands before you now is not someone closed off, but someone conscious. You became hard to manipulate, and that shift altered the entire spiritual dynamic around you. Guilt no longer controls you. You used to carry responsibility for emotions that were never yours to manage. You felt bad for saying no. You explained yourself until you were exhausted. You stayed longer than you should have because you didn't want to disappoint anyone. But something awakened in you. You realized that guilt was being used as a leash, not a virtue. Compassion does not require self-betrayal. Love does not demand constant sacrifice. And once you understood that, guilt lost its grip. Ask yourself this, chosen one, when did you stop apologizing for honoring your limits? When did you realize that being kind doesn't mean being compliant? That moment was not rebellion. It was clarity. You learned that guilt thrives where boundaries are weak. And as your boundaries strengthened, guilt had nowhere to stand. Pressure no longer rushes you. Manipulation loves urgency. It whispers, decide now or lose everything. It creates panic, false deadlines, emotional countdowns. But you learn to pause, to breathe, to ask questions instead of reacting. You recognize that what's truly aligned does not require you to abandon discernment. Anything rushing you to bypass your intuition is not meant to protect you. It's meant to control you. Have you noticed how calm you've become under pressure? How you no longer confuse urgency with importance? That's mastery. You learn that stillness is not delay, it's authority. And the more grounded you became, the less manipulators could move you. Threats no longer shake you. Whether subtle or obvious, emotional or situational, threats once triggered fear, fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of being misunderstood. But you faced enough storms to know this truth. Anything that can be taken from you through intimidation was never secure to begin with. Your worth is not negotiable. Your future is not hostage to anyone's approval. This is where emotional mastery emerges. You don't flinch when someone tries to provoke fear. You don't collapse when pressure increases. You don't surrender your values just to maintain peace. And that terrifies manipulation, because manipulation only works on those who fear consequences more than misalignment. Do you see how powerful this makes you, chosen one? Manipulators rely on emotional hooks, guilt, urgency, fear. But you remove the hooks. You feel emotions without being ruled by them. You listen without being led. You decide without being rushed. That level of inner stability cannot be coerced. This didn't happen overnight. It was earned through disappointment, through boundaries being tested, through moments when you chose discomfort over compromise. And now your emotional world is no longer an open door. It's a guarded gate. So let me ask you this. What kind of life opens up when no one can pull your strings anymore? What becomes possible when your decisions are rooted in truth instead of pressure? Hold this ground, chosen one. Emotional mastery is quiet, but it is unshakable. And those who cannot control you will always fear you, because you are finally free. Chosen one, there came a moment when you realized something vital was draining you. And it wasn't always people, problems, or circumstances. It was leakage. Quiet, constant, unnoticed loss of energy through over-explaining, over-engaging, overthinking, and overreacting. You were giving your life force to things that could never return it. And the day you became aware of that was the day your power began to return to you. You started protecting your time, your focus, and your peace. Not aggressively, not selfishly, but intentionally. You understood that time is not just hours on a clock. It is attention, presence, and direction. Every unnecessary conversation, every mental replay, every emotional tug of war was costing you something sacred. So you became selective. You stopped answering everything. You stopped being available for every disturbance. And in that discipline, your clarity sharpened. Ask yourself this, chosen one. How much energy did you once spend proving, defending, or correcting things that were never meant to matter? How many hours were lost in arguments that changed nothing, explanations that convinced no one, and worries that solved nothing? When you saw that clearly, something inside you said, enough. You don't chase anymore. Chasing drains dignity and scatters focus. You learn that what is aligned moves toward you without force. What requires pursuit, persuasion, or pressure is usually not meant to stay. So instead of running after validation, opportunities, or attention, you stood still, rooted. And from that grounded place, you noticed something powerful. The right things began to find you. You also stopped arguing with shadows. Not every criticism deserves a response. Not every misunderstanding requires correction. Not every attack is real. Some battles exist only to distract you, to pull you into emotional noise, to siphon your energy into endless reaction. You learned to identify when something had no substance, and you withdrew your attention. Darkness starves when ignored. Do you feel the difference, chosen one? Your mind is quieter. Your movements are more deliberate. Your reactions are slower, but stronger. That's because energy once wasted is now conserved. And conserved energy doesn't just sit still, it multiplies. It deepens your presence. It strengthens your intuition. It sharpens your impact. This conservation of energy changed how you show up in the world. You no longer arrive exhausted before the work even begins. You no longer feel pulled in 1,000 directions. You move with intention, speak with purpose, and rest without guilt. Your power feels heavier now, not frantic, not scattered, but concentrated. Have you noticed how people feel you before you speak? How situations shift simply because you're calm within them? That's the result of stored energy. When your inner world is not leaking, it becomes charged, stable, magnetic. So let me ask you this, chosen one. What becomes possible when all your energy is finally working for you instead of against you? What kind of life can you build when peace is protected and focus is honored? Stay disciplined in this. Protect what you've reclaimed. Because energy is life, and the moment you stop leaking it, you stepped into a level of power that cannot be rushed, borrowed, or broken.